The Nobel Peace Prize has been awarded to a Japanese grassroots movement working to eliminate nuclear weapons. It's made up of survivors of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki atomic bombings. The group's leader says he felt people helping Palestinians in Gaza deserved to win instead. So what's behind the Nobel Committee's decision? This is Inside Story. Hello, welcome to the program. I'm Tom McRae. The Nobel Peace Prize, awarded by Norway, is one of the world's most prestigious honours. This year, it was given to Nihon Hidanko, a Japanese organisation working to eliminate nuclear weapons. While its win is applauded, it came after widespread speculation the award would go to organisations or individuals working for peace in Gaza or helping victims of Israel's genocide. That view was shared by the co-chairman of Nihon Hidanko. So why did the Nobel Committee decide otherwise, and what lies behind that decision? We'll put that to our guests in just a moment, but first, this report from Barbara Angopa.
Nihon Hidanko, a Japanese grassroots anti-nuclear organisation, has been awarded this year's Nobel Peace Prize. The group has sent survivors of nuclear attacks across the world to tell their story since its founding in 1956. 140,000 people were killed when the US dropped an atomic bomb on Hiroshima in August 1945. 74,000 more were killed when another bomb was released over Nagasaki 3 days later.
Hibakusha survivors experienced the bombings and believe we were victims, so we've worked hard for this cause. But you could be victims too in the future. Everyone could. That is why you have to understand what hibakusha is.
Hibakusha refers to survivors of nuclear attacks who say their experience is still relevant today as a warning. Some of the few survivors heard about the news of the award in Hiroshima.
When I heard about the Nobel Peace Prize, it felt like a light suddenly shone through. I felt I could see the light. This feels like the first step, the beginning of a movement toward nuclear abolition.
There had been speculation that the Nobel Committee would recognize those helping Palestinians in Gaza. More than 42,000 people have been killed, with 100,000 injured, and nearly all Gaza's 2.3 million population forced from their homes in what's been called the world's first televised genocide. Among those tipped beforehand to win were the International Court of Justice, the International Criminal Court, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres, and Palestinian journalists who have been targeted and killed by Israel. There was also strong speculation that the prize would go to UNRWA, the UN relief agency for Palestinians, or for groups working for peace in the area. That view was shared by the co-chair of Nihon Hidanko.
Why Nihon Hidanko? I thought for sure it would be the people working so hard in Gaza, as we've seen.
He said Gaza today is like Japan 80 years ago at the end of the Second World War. The group is working tirelessly to prevent another nuclear genocide and hopes that this recognition will prevent other massacres. Barbara Angopa, Al Jazeera for Inside Story.
Okay, let's bring in our guests now. In Oslo, we are joined by Asmund Aukrust, a Member of Parliament for Norway's Labour Party. He nominated UNRWA for the Nobel Peace Prize. In the French city of Toulouse, Lex Takkenberg, who is the Senior Advisor with the non-profit Arab Renaissance for Democracy and Development. He spent 3 decades working in senior roles with the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees. And also in Oslo is Henrik Urdal, Director of the Peace Research Institute in the Norwegian capital. Thank you very much, all three of you, for joining us here today on Inside Story. Henrik, if I can begin with you first, can you just give us a little bit of background on the committee? How does it work? What does it actually consider when it comes to making a decision?
So the committee is consisting of 5 members, all nominated by the Norwegian Parliament to Storting. They don't have to be politicians. They can come from different strains in life. And it is a committee that is honoring three different parts of the will that Alfred Nobel left behind. It could either be for areas within fraternity between nations, it can be for disarmament, and it can be for what he called peace congresses. And so this is the prize to Nihon Hidanko is a prize for disarmament, which has a very long tradition in the Nobel Peace Prize Committee.
Asmund, you nominated UNRWA. Can you just explain the reasons why and what it is about the organisation's work over the past year that has stood out for you and you thought deserved to be awarded the Peace Prize?
Well, the reason I nominated UNRWA almost a year ago, because the nomination is in January, is that UNRWA has for many decades been the most important organization for the Palestinian people, both within Palestine but also in the neighboring countries. And the last year, they have truly been the lifeline for the Palestinians living in Gaza. In the worst year in the Middle East in modern history. So I think the work they have done, especially the last year, made them deserve the Nobel Peace Prize. I think also it could be a symbol of honoring help workers in conflict areas. We have seen the last years that help workers have been a target themselves, and this has been especially in Gaza, where many members of different health organizations has been killed, and that also include UNRWA, who have lost many of their staff members in Gaza the last year.
Lex, we want to make sure that we don't take anything away from Nihon Hidanko, very deserving of an award like this. I mean, but even they said that they thought the prize would have gone to someone who's fighting hard for peace within Gaza, given everything that has happened over the year. Why do you think that UNRWA wasn't awarded it? What do you think is behind that decision?
Well, I fully also agree that UNRWA, for the reasons mentioned by the previous speaker, is fully deserving of recognition for its heroic work, especially during the past year, but also the work the agency has done for over 75 years in the Near East to allow the Palestinian refugees to sort of survive the ordeal of their ongoing Nakba, of the ongoing displacement and upheaval with dignity. Why I believe it hasn't happened is that UNRWA's candidature was obviously shrouded by controversy. Israeli officials and other pro-Israeli academics and others and journalists have seen UNRWA as an agency that first the organization has been accused since the beginning of the year of involvement in potentially of some of the local employees' unsubstantiated claims. But nevertheless, allegations of involvement in the 7 October attacks. More widely, Israel also sees UNRWA as an agency that sort of perpetuates the situation of the Palestinian refugees and thereby sort of the unresolved Palestinian conflict. And that is a thorn in the eye, especially of the current extreme right-wing Israeli government.
Henrik, your organisation issues a list of the top 5 picks each year before the prize is awarded. UNRWA was one of those likelier winners this year. So what do you put it down to? Why do you think that they didn't win, and were you surprised by that?
Yeah, we had UNRWA on the 3rd place on our list of 5 candidates. We also had the International Court of Justice, which would also potentially have been a prize that was drawing attention to the conflict in Gaza. I think it is difficult for us. We know certainly know exactly what was on the committee's table in the very final rounds. They're making a short list, and obviously they had a number of different areas that they could be awarding the prize to. We should also be aware of the fact that some of the world's conflicts are not getting attention at all, such as the current ongoing conflict in the Sudan. So the committee has a number of current, and very important good contributions to peace, and have to select between them. It's impossible for us to know exactly what was discussed in the committee. That won't be released until 50 years from now. So we can only, speculate. And I would very strongly say also that the committee has not shied away from controversial issues in the past. And I think simply it was the importance now weighing on the committee's mind that nuclear deterrence or nuclear arms is such an current and important issue that they wanted to draw attention to that. And that is also a prize which is implicitly a criticism of both Norwegian and Japanese governments for not signing up to the ban treaty. So I think this is not a prize without controversy, and the committee had to select between several good candidates this year.
Yeah, we'll get on to some of the other controversies that we've seen in the past and the effect that has had on the Peace Prize in just a minute. But Asmund, I want to go back to your decision to nominate UNRWA, because that's been called deplorable by some in the Israeli media. Were you surprised by that reaction? Was it something that you were expecting?
Well, we have seen for many years that UNRWA has been a very high political pressure, most from Israel, but also from other countries. We have seen in many years that there have been cuts in UNRWA, also from European countries. And of course, the last year there have been an extreme pressure. So I was expecting that this will, create controversial in Israel. But what I didn't expect was how massive it was. The last years, I think I have received tens of thousands of emails. And I also had to shut down all my social media because of this Israeli campaign. And of course, this is, minimal compared to the leadership of UNRWA and, all the attacks they have received from Israeli officials and very many others.
Lex, more than 220 UNRWA staff have been killed in Gaza. 2/3 of its buildings have been damaged or destroyed so far in a year of war. This is an organisation that continues to pay the ultimate price for just trying to do its work. What would this prize, the Peace Prize, have meant for those people? You've worked there for 30 years. Must have a great insight into what it would have meant to those people.
It would have meant a tremendous boost, indeed, under the atrocious situations that they are doing their work under at the moment and during the past 12 months. On the other hand, the Palestinian UNRWA colleagues and their international counterparts take the principle, motivation and urge to continue to do their work by their desire to sort of support their own people surviving this genocidal onslaught, and so even short of the prize, I'm convinced their motivation remains very strong. But indeed, a recognition would have been appropriate. In the 30 years I worked with the agency, there have been recognitions of elements and aspects of UNRWA's work, the UNRWA's quality education, UNRWA's microfinance program, etc., but never recognition, sort of the ultimate recognition in the form of the Nobel Peace Prize, I would say. And its sister agency, UNHCR, received the prize, twice over its existence. So yeah, it would have been appropriate, but it will not fail the Palestinians, employees and their international colleagues to continue, the work that is needed to try to overcome this tragedy.
And of course, it must be said that people don't get into this type of work for any awards or recognition. They do it to help people. Henrik, if we can just take a step back as well, can you just give us an idea of the campaigns or the types of outside lobby groups that try and influence the committee when it comes to making a decision like this? How much of that goes on behind the scenes that we don't know about?
So it's difficult to say what is happening behind the scenes that we don't know about, but we can see that there is quite a bit in the open as well, and there are those who try to influence the committee. The former secretary of the Nobel Institute, who was also the secretary of the committee, said that if anything, those kinds of efforts have a negative impact. I think that those sending thousands of emails to Aukrust, or those also shaming us in social media for putting UNRWA on our list, only I think increases our resolve in making sure that we have contribute to shed a light on the important contributions that are happening for peace. And I think it's important to say that the reason why we put UNRWA on the list is that it is important that humanitarian organizations like UNRWA, who do an absolutely essential job for civilian populations in war, are recognized for the important work that they are doing, and they should not be the victims of this kind of politicized and highly, I have to say, poisonous campaigns like we've seen now. UNRWA is an organization which is standing on basic humanitarian principles, and it is absolutely essential for civilian Palestinians and should be recognized for that.
As we heard earlier, the committee doesn't necessarily shy away from making controversial decisions. Asmund, I mean, how much political interference is there here? I mean, is it a political decision as much as anything? And do you think it should be? Because how would you go about taking the politics out of a committee that only has 5 people on it?
Well, the committee has nothing to do with politics, and it's, as already said, they are working totally independent, and no one knows about their discussions on what kind of consideration they have done when they choose this winner for this year. But however, from Norway and from Norwegian politics, it's very important to continue our support for UNRWA. We were one of the few countries that didn't cut or freeze our support after these allegations came from Israel in January, I think it was. And now we have quite dramatically increased our funding for UNRWA because the needs are so big. But I think more importantly than our funding is the political support that we are giving to UNRWA. That is important both to recognize the extremely important job that thousands of people have done the last year they are living in the hell themselves, and still they have been able to give help that have saved many lives. And the other very important aspect from Norway, which I think also a prize could contribute to, is to give the Palestinian people hope. I mean, a prize to UNRWA hadn't changed much on the ground, but it could have been giving hope to the Palestinian people. And that was also one of the reasons that Norway recognized Palestine as a state in May, together with Spain and Ireland, to give hope in this, very hopeless year for the Palestinian people.
Lex, you mentioned this a little earlier, that UNRWA was attacked and criticised by many, especially there was a lot of controversy when it fired 9 staff members who it said might have been involved in the Hamas attack on October the 7th. How big a part do you think that might have played in a decision like this?
Well, I believe that both the UN internal investigation and the second independent inquiry with respect to UNRWA's neutrality policies and practices has shown that even if there were a handful of UNRWA employees who might have been involved. Again, also there is no evidence. UNRWA terminated them, not for misconduct, but in the interest of the agency, as it is called, in the interest of the United Nations, to sort of, stem off the controversy. Even if that had been the case, it doesn't mean that the organization itself is not very robust. I have myself worked with the agency for 3 decades, including a decade in Gaza, as head of the agency's ethics department, also as the general counsel. and I can assert that the agency has very robust systems in place to deal with any allegations of impropriety, misconduct, whether it is sexual misconduct, whether it is corruption, whether it is breaches of neutrality, allegations of involvement in terrorism. And so the agency has a very healthy ability to sort of operate in the very difficult circumstances that it is forced to operate. And this is not the first time in Gaza. I mean, there have been 5 other wars. UNRWA has also operated during the civil war in Syria and currently again in Lebanon. So the agency, operates in the eye of a storm and does so with extraordinary resilience and ability to maintain integrity under the most tiring circumstances.
Henrik, you mentioned that there's been many controversial winners in the past. I mean, Henry Kissinger, for one, Barack Obama was given it in his very first year of his presidency. I mean, are those past controversies starting to undermine the award?
Well, I think if the award is always given for processes that are locked down and completed and uncontroversial, the purpose of the prize would arguably disappear. Part of the importance, or the reason why the prize is considered to be important, is that it is also daring to go into ongoing processes, and that means that some will be unhappy with candidates and prizes, and I'm sure the Iranian regime last year was quite unhappy about the prize then. We have a number of prizes in the past: Liu Xiaobo, the Chinese dissident, as you mentioned, Obama, Le Duc and Kissinger. So not all controversial prizes have been necessarily successful. Some of them have been and have pointed to important contributions. So I think the committee is trying to strike a balance here between finding candidates that stand for something, that have made important contributions. There is no way that those prizes, those processes can necessarily be completely uncontroversial, and sometimes the committee fails to address the right candidate on the right moment. There are also those candidates that never received the prize, such as Gandhi, and back in 1948, who died probably when he was supposed to have received the prize. So there are those candidates and those prizes in the past that are not wholly successful, and then we have to remember that there are a number of prizes that also have contributed to positive development, including the 2016 prize to Santos in Colombia, that probably pushed the Colombian peace agreement over the finishing line.
Yeah, we know that Desmond Tutu spoke out and said that it opened doors after he was awarded it. Wherever he went in the world, he was received and listened to like nothing before he was awarded that. Asmund, in regards to the Peace Prize, I mean, is there still a place for it in 2024? Is it still relevant in the world that we live in now?
Well, yes, obviously. I think, especially in these times where there are so many wars going on in Ukraine, in the Middle East, in Sudan, and other places, it's important to discuss the ways out of war, and to discuss conflict solving, and to honor those who are doing an important job. I think, as you mentioned, there have been many controversial prizes. Some of them have historically, when we look back, it might have been the wrong decision, but I think those prizes also make this prize so important that you will also find controversial prizes. This year, it is 30 years ago since Rabin, Yasser Arafat and Shimon Peres won the prize in 1994. It was the hope of peace after the Oslo process, and we all know what happened after. So, that's an example of really honoring that people tried, even though, it's been a very sad story about the follow-up of the Oslo agreement.
Lex, this prize is over 120 years old. It feels like there at this point in time, with everything that's going on between Ukraine and Russia, Gaza and beyond in the Middle East, as well as the situation, the conflict in Sudan as well, which just gets worse and worse by the day. I mean, it feels like there's more war and more conflict now than, well, certainly in the last little while. Do you feel like this prize can actually still make a difference to the world that we live in?
Well, I also agree that it does, especially if it serves as a recognition for individuals or organizations that have over many years contributed to sort of pursuing peace, pursuing a peaceful resolution of conflict, pursuing keeping a horizon of peace within the spectrum. So absolutely, I think even the attention that is annually given to the prize shows shows the importance and the significance of such recognition being bestowed on individuals and organizations that have made such contribution. So absolutely, I'm convinced that it will continue to be in the years and decades to come.
Just finally, do you think that the committee, given some of the controversies that have sprung up after they have awarded some people a prize, because they don't all age particularly well, like Ethiopia's Prime Minister was awarded it, and then civil war broke out just months later, as well as Myanmar's leader Aung San Suu Kyi. Her government was accused of committing genocide against the Rohingya Muslims. Just briefly, do you think the committee should review past winners to see if they are still worthy of the award? Or do you think it just gets far too difficult? Henrik, if you can answer that.
Sure, I'd be happy to. The committee cannot take back prizes, and I also think it's not a particularly meaningful thing to ask for, because you can never guarantee that someone in the future will do something that is worthy of critique. The other thing is that, of course, the having received the Peace Prize is something that is a platform for criticizing those who are then not acting as they should have been expected. And Aung San Suu Kyi is a case in point. So she has received criticism precisely because she is a Peace Prize winner. And I think that is one of the important aspects of the prize, is that it's keeping its winners to a different standard.
Thank you so much. We will have to leave it there, but we really do appreciate your time and your insight into this. Asmund, Lex and Henrik, thanks for joining us today on Inside Story. Well, thanks to you two as well for joining us. You can see the program again anytime by visiting our website, that's aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, go to our Facebook page, that's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on X. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. For me, Tom McRae, and the whole entire team, bye for now.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.